We're going to talk about Jane Austen today because I
Yes.
just read Pride and Prejudice and Emma for the first time.
Yes, and I dressed for the occasion. I have my Mr. Darcy earrings and my Jane Austen text necklace and my mug of tea.
Oh,
So I am
goodness
ready to go.
Okay, so I know there's a lot of very passionate Jane Austen fans out there.
Yes, there are a couple of us.
Yes, so I am glad that I finally know what you guys are talking about. And, you know, I guess it's really embarrassing to admit that I've never read so many of these classic books. But yes, this is the first time I've ever read any Jane Austen.
Right.
So, and I listened to both of them on audio. This is my scheme. Now that I'm reading the classics, I'm choosing to listen to them mostly on audio while I'm out walking every day.
That's fair, but I challenge you to read the words someday.
Okay. Why?
Well, this is going to get into just reading versus listening. Listening's more passive. Reading, you can engage a little bit more. You can pause. You can reflect.
Oh,
I don't know.
That is definitely one problem with the audiobooks. Is if I want to stop and think about something, I can't, because I'm not going to pause it, and I can't bookmark things either. There's definitely challenges, but something is better than nothing. So
it's true. It's a good gateway.
Yeah. Now I think I do want to reread Pride and Prejudice because my habit on audiobooks is to speed them up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not really realize this until I tried to start Emma, and I was just like, what? I don't even know what's going on. That for these books, I have to slow it down almost all the way to just normal speed.
Absolutely.
Because the language is a little bit different and blah, blah, blah. And you just have to pay a little bit more attention. So I feel like I really need to do Pride and Prejudice over again, reading the actual book to get a better sense of it as a novel.
Right.
Now,
I agree. So when I was teaching college, I would teach these books. And my students were like, oh, I'll just listen to it in audio. And I'm like, you're going to do yourself a disservice. But I'm not an audio podcast person myself. I like text, and I still like paper. I tab my books. I have a notebook. I'm taking notes. Like, I'm just that. Even the only books I don't do that are stupid modern chick lit that I read it as I go to bed at night. But if I'm even reading a classic, I take notes and I just go into that world. But, that's probably why, I'm a teacher, is I'm that person. I'm always learning, and I always engage differently. And I know 99.999% of the population is not like that. But
I don't know. I think a lot of people do still prefer the physical books. I've just gotten into an ebook and audiobook habit, and it's hard for me now to read an actual book. That's so crazy to say. But you know why? It's because I'm such a library junkie, and especially the last few months, I can't get library books. So it's all the ebooks. And if I'm reading in bed, I don't have to have the light on if I'm using my iPad,
My husband is like you. I mean, he's podcast, he's audiobook, he's Kindle. We are total opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But that's all right. He's still reading, he's still listening, and if I'm listening to a podcast, I need to be sitting down at my desk taking notes. I need notes.
Oh my gosh, Deanna, you are such a nerd.
I'm total nerd. I should have had my book nerd mug for today.
I mean, you literally are a grown-up Hermione.
No, it's so bad.
She would totally take notes on podcasts.
I do.
Well,
and I'm like,
have her little magic quill do it, but
my husband will be like, oh, listen.
Yep. I mean, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Yeah. So I don't take notes. I don't bookmark things. It's just not the way I do things.
That's right.
I used to keep a book notebook. I don't know what happened to me. I used to keep a notebook of all the little things I read in books that I wanted to remember. And I still flip through that because it was all nonfiction stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I wrote that down. But I don't do it anymore. I don't know why.
So I have these everywhere. And this is my life, and I keep these little notebooks with me at all times. And even if I'm in the grocery store, I see something, or if I'm on, just see something at a store, and I'm like, oh, I like that. I don't buy anything full price, and then I'll search for it online or a coupon code or something. This is my everything notebook.
And you have a bunch of them lying around in different places?
Yeah, and I don't. So this is like just the everyday general notebook, and then I have a notebook for reading, and then I have a notebook for reading classics, and I have a notebook for reading nonfiction. And that's I'm that crazy person.
And you have a notebook to keep track of where all your notebooks are.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, maybe I need to try that. I do have a little one in my purse, but I think I would benefit from having them tucked away in different corners of the house instead of trying to keep track of one. Like I have one big notebook right now that's just some old vintage, accounting ledger book I had.
Yeah.
But if I don't have it with me, I'm like, ugh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Anyway, let's talk about Jane Austen. Yeah. So, okay, let's start with Pride and Prejudice because I read that one first.
Okay.
I have to admit, I kind of liked Emma better.
Oh, okay. I just had to get out the sigh.
Yeah.
So Jane Austen said that when she wrote Emma that it was a heroine that only she could love.
Well, yeah, she's like
just not that likable. But I love Emma, but for different reasons.
Yeah, I liked Mr. Knightley better than Mr. Darcy.
I can see that.
Okay.
Wait till you read Sense and Sensibility. Read that one next.
Okay,
and then we'll talk about our Austen heroes.
Yes, I did just get that on audiobook. Sorry, but yes, I did just get that on audiobook. Okay. So I don't know. I guess here's some interesting things from Pride and Prejudice that I really enjoyed thinking about. Is their family structure and the craziness of the mom and the craziness of the young girls and knowing what it feels like to have a family that you're kind of embarrassed by but still love.
Yeah.
And just how wacky some of their being. Oh, and of course you can't help but like, what was the youngest sister, the one that married
Lydia?
The loser? Yeah.
Lydia. Yeah. Oh, by the way, there'll be spoilers in this if you haven't read them.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
No. It's going to happen. Yeah.
Like I know what it's like to have a person like that in your family too. That's just completely clueless and self-absorbed.
Yep.
So
and
a lot of it was so relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just absolutely timeless.
But again, just like we talked about with Little Women, it's so hard for me to just wrap my head around how strict the social structures were for women and how stuck at home all these ladies were until somebody came to visit them, or they got to go on a picnic, or, they went overseas for a year. But generally their life is so small.
It is. It is
small.
It is. And it's, it's just a different time. You take up hobbies, you play the piano, and you embroider or sew. You may learn French. Have you read Jane Eyre?
Yes.
Okay. So, like learning they were learning German, the cousins, the two girls. And so like you find ways to occupy and gossip, lots of gossip.
Yes, lots of gossip. And I guess like you have to learn French so that you'll be attractive to a mate who will think that that's important, that you're well educated for no reason other than to be a good conversationalist, which, hey, I get. You want to have a good conversationalist for a spouse. You don't want to have a Mrs. Bennet for a spouse because the only thing she can talk about is herself,
marrying off
her spinning brain and having to go take a nap. And by the way, okay, so what is it with these weak constitutions? I don't understand, like, especially in Emma. Like, Emma's dad is hilarious. I love him. But, like, he's afraid of,
Mr.
You can't walk outside because you might get
sick. I know.
You can't, have a window open. Like, folks, you can have a window open. It's all right. But I just wonder.
I think it's just kind of this unknown, or you get set in your ways. I mean, as I'm getting older, I realize that I'm getting, not Mrs. Bennet because she's just a piece of work, but I don't go out as often, and I don't take as many risks. And I think maybe that was just kind of amplified. When I was young, I was riding every roller coaster and doing stuff. And now I look up at them and I'm like, I think I'll skip that one today. I'll be over here, just having an ice cream or something. So I think that as you get older, and I think maybe in that time period that was even more amplified for whatever reason, because the world is smaller. Yeah, and people died a lot easier back then, so things were scary. A draft could cause a cold, and if you're an old man, then that's it.
Yeah. It's so strange. But I do like how in both, I love reading about the walks that people go on.
Oh, yes, let's take a turn.
Yes.
I say that all the time. I'm like, oh, let's go take a turn.
I mean, that's all they did, I guess. Yeah. Like, I think of Jane Fairfax and Emma, and how she wanted to walk to the post office by herself, and that horrid lady, Mrs. Elton.
Oh my gosh. I think she is one of the worst characters. I mean, even worse than Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
I think that she's just, to me, she's Dolores Umbridge level of bad.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say, she's not quite as sadistic.
No, but she's like, you want to hate her that bad.
Yes. Oh, yeah. She's just horrible. But, you know, it's like, I can totally relate to the needing to go on the daily walk, and that is part of your routine. I mean, you're living out in the middle of nowhere. You might as well go for a walk to the post office. It's going to take up a good chunk of the day.
Maybe you'll run into someone, or maybe, you know, you'll get some fresh air. Who knows? Maybe you'll find that bachelor on the way to the post office.
Yep. Hey, that's why I go for a walk, not for the bachelor, because I already have mine. But I love living where I can go out my door and I'm guaranteed to run into a neighbor, or I can walk on the greenway or walk over to the library and have those stranger encounters, which are really nice. Even for me, an introvert, I like stranger encounters if I'm choosing it.
You know? It's on your terms.
Yeah, so it is like that. That's the most freedom these women have, is going on walks.
And that's a key word. That was their freedom. They could do this. You know, and then the long walk that Elizabeth takes in Pride and Prejudice, that's just scandalous, right? She's got 6 inches of mud on her hemline.
Yeah.
Right? And Mr. Darcy's like, oh, I didn't notice. I was checking out her fine eyes.
I mean, I'm sure he's a good guy, but I was just like, okay, yeah.
Have you seen any of the movie versions?
No.
Okay.
You know, I just don't have time. If I
don't
have
either.
A choice between watching a movie version, even the new Little Women, I haven't watched yet because
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
But when I was teaching and I had, you know, a stack of essays like this tall, I would sit on my couch and I would put in the BBC Pride and Prejudice, the one with Colin Firth. It's 5.5 hours long, and I would power grade. And I would just have it on in the background because I've watched it so many times. And I would just power grade, and that's how I got through grading my essays. So now if I'm working and I need to get in a flow state, I have BritBox, the subscription, and I'll put it on in the background, and boom, I'm in flow state, and I can knock out work. The music, just, it's so funny.
You know what I do that with? I'm embarrassed to say. Star Trek: The Next Generation.
But at least, I mean, I've watched that religiously. Is it Wesley Crusher that does it?
You're so much more highbrow than me, Deanna. I'm so embarrassed.
But I know the characters. I used to watch it, so.
I'm just like, random episode. Just sit and have my Star Trek: The Next Generation on in the background. Now I'm crying. I'm so
There are worse shows it could be, honestly. Yeah. There are a lot worse shows. That was a good show.
It could be that, or the Great British Bake Off, something that you know, doesn't require a lot of concentration. Those are my two go-tos. But yeah, I hardly ever watch TV, but when I do, that's what I'm doing. I'm working on something that doesn't require a lot of concentration.
Right.
And I have that going on in the background.
So I play it on my computer on BritBox because our living room, you can't even sit on the couch. It's covered in books right now because I'm cataloging everything.
Yes.
So, and we don't even have time to watch TV. So I just put it on in the background and I hear the music and I'm like, oh, okay, blah, 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 and I just get tons of work done.
Yeah.
But, okay, now, so back to the novel.
Yes, I guess thinking about it, it wouldn't be so bad having all that free time to learn how to play the piano and learn foreign languages. But
it would be nice.
Yeah, it would be, but it has to be a choice.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, and not just because that is the way it has to be for women. I just, if I had to go in a time machine, I certainly would not go back to that time because the clothing.
If you're a woman, if you're a woman and you want to go way back, it's either Egypt or the Etruscans.
Or you have to go back to hunter-gatherer societies where everything is egalitarian.
But there's really no such thing as egalitarian because they weren't, because there was still a head man that you would follow. Sorry, the anthropologist comes out in me every once in a while.
Okay, so when should I go back in time?
Egypt or Etruscans, because women had more rights. In Egypt, they could do anything but be pharaoh, but even a few of those found ways to do it. And,
okay, then
you could even institute divorce or do whatever in the ancient Egypt. You could own a business if you were a woman. It was a really good time.
Okay.
The only ancient civilization, the Etruscans were okay. They were good, not as good as the Egyptians, but the Egyptians were truly the best place for women in ancient times.
What was the childcare situation like?
I mean, you would probably have helpers and people, and if you were in a rural area, the village raises the kids. It's
Yeah. You know what I like to do when I'm reading these classic novels is make a note of the other novels that they mention, the other books that they mention within the book.
Do you read them?
No, not yet.
Oh, I do.
But yeah, so tell me, okay, so like The Vicar of Wakefield, I see that in a lot of, have you read that?
A long time ago, probably in my 20s. I don't remember very much about it, so it didn't leave a lasting impression.
Yeah. There's a couple that pop up pretty frequently.
Yeah. I should reread that one, though, now that you bring that up. In Northanger Abbey, which is my least favorite Jane Austen, but I'm not a really, I like Frankenstein. I think it's interesting on sort of an intellectual level, and it's a very interesting way she wrote it, but I'm just not a Gothic novel lover. I don't like Wuthering Heights. I will admit it. I just don't like it. I think it's a horrible sense of life. I like Jane Eyre. But Northanger Abbey, my least favorite, but I don't, and she was kind of being tongue-in-cheek on the Gothic novel with that one. But in there, she mentions novels that Kathleen Moreland is reading, and I at a time, again, in my early 20s, I read all of them.
Aww, that's so cool. I love that. That's
funny.
What I want to do someday is just take my direction from, and I do try to make a note of it. Like if I see another book mentioned in a book, I will make a note of it to read that other book, just because it's fun. You never know what's
notebook. Now you have a notebook for books and books.
I know. I need one. I totally need one.
Yeah.
So I don't really know a lot about Jane Austen. I mean, I Googled, so I know that she wrote this. She wrote Pride and Prejudice first anonymously, didn't she?
Well, it wasn't the first to be published, but she did write it. That was her first that she wrote when she was around 16, and it was called.
She wrote that when she was 16.
Mm-hmm. And she started it and started kind of carrying these plots and stuff, and then I think why can't I remember this now that I'm on the spot? Sense and Sensibility was the first published. But it wasn't the first written. Oh God, what was the first? I can't believe I'm just blanking on this. But so she wrote that, and then she went back and she changed some things, and then it published. But she published anonymously, and it's interesting. At the time period, the Prince Regent, who is a very interesting character, he was, and she hated him, and he loved her work. And actually, she went to his library, and was invited there, and she dedicated a book to him because he was the patron, but it was he bought the first ever copy of any of her novels, and it was found out recently, and that was really interesting. So, but she wrote these, but she, if you read what's called her Juvenilla, she wrote a lot of stuff, like there's a history of England. It's really sweet when she was little and young, so she was always writing. And that was family entertainment. You don't have TV, you don't have podcasts, so you write and you read stories to each other.
Yeah.
And, when her father died, her brother was adopted by the Knight family and then was kind of landed gentry and really elevated status. When he inherited property, it was after Jane Austen's father had died, and it was her sister Cassandra, who was engaged, but then her fiance died, and she never married. And then her mom and her, and so they were sort of a burden on the family. So Jane was trying to write to help support the family. And then her older brother, who became this part of this landed gentry and inherited this property, moved them into Chawton Cottage. And that's where they lived. And then she died rather young. In fact, in 2 days is the anniversary of her death. And I will always remember, because my mom died on the same day as Jane Austen.
Huh. So
it's like a double whammy day.
Jane Austen month?
Yeah, so July 18th is like a double whammy day, like my hero and my mom. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to under the covers all day.
Yes. Yeah. You know what's funny about that too, but I don't want to get too off track. But have you ever noticed that a day will come up for you that is maybe like a day like that, and you're not even aware of it, but your mood changes and your body feels uncomfortable and you don't even realize why, and then it maybe will dawn on you a week later, oh, that's why I was upset.
True. It's true. And like sometimes, like even last year we were so busy, it wasn't until dinner time and I was like, oh, that's why I've been cranky all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't
knows,
wake up.
Your brain doesn't.
Yeah, it's weird.
So what makes her your hero?
Well, first off, her writing is absolutely amazing. I have many writer heroes: Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Livy the Roman historian. You know, his is, you know, kind of dry, but what he did and what he was trying to do. And so these are my heroes, these individuals, but she wrote and published in a time when it wasn't common for women to do it. And she wrote about her time in a way that kind of really exposed these issues with women, you know, and that word feminist has this weird connotation in the modern world. And so I try not to use it because it, you know, there's some angst and angriness type of that goes along with it, I think. But she was truly forward thinking and making this commentary, and that's what you picked up on, these social roles of women and also of class. And she was writing commentary on it way before Dickens was, you know, and Dickens didn't necessarily deal with women as much as she did. And there's something charming and
super
absolutely wonderful about this world. And yeah, I mean, if you're a woman, you probably don't want to go back to the Regency, although the underclothes in that short period of time, you don't have those tight corsets like what you had before and what you had after. Mm-hmm. So the dress is more comfortable for women.
Nice. Okay.
So,
well,
you know,
plus.
Yeah, you don't have these crazy tight stays that you've got to stir like you do in the Victorian period and what you had before. Yeah. So it's this really interesting time. And then you have this crazy political thing going on, you know, the wars with France and coming out of the independence, and the, you know, slavery in England was abolished before it was in America, but it was in that time period. And so Mansfield Park, she writes, there's some commentary on slavery in there, and she definitely puts in her opinion, and it is not favorable, right? Mm-hmm. So she's writing these amazing novels with these incredible characters, but in a way that it's seriously social commentary. Yeah. And she's getting out her ideas, and they're very, very forward thinking.
Yeah. I would say Emma, I guess maybe that whole entire book and that character was her way of highlighting the class issues more.
Absolutely. And then you have, you know, Mrs. Elton comes in, and even like little sweet demure Jane Fairfax, you know, there's just all of these archetypes of women that she's writing about. And, you know, she definitely has her heroes. Elizabeth Bennet is, you know, obstinate, headstrong girl, right? That's the line in the novel. And she values that. She values the characters that have an opinion.
Yeah.
Even Harriet Smith, who is of lower class, she gets caught up in Emma's web, and she's actually worse for it. It's when she has her own volition that she's better.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much, you know, good-heartedness in Emma, but she's just completely blind to her blind spots, which are her views on class. But I guess that's the whole point, is that she's an otherwise lovable person, but I mean, look at this complete blind spot she has. The value she herself gives to the station in life.
Yeah, and you know, and Emma she's a horrible snob, and she thinks that she knows best for everyone, so she's matchmaking everybody, right? She's a busybody.
Well, she differently than Miss Bates. She's a product of her environment, you know.
She's bored, and she just wants to, you know, she thinks she's doing well by everybody, and she's a busybody differently than Miss Bates. Miss Bates is, you know, just, there's this innocence to her, and she wants to be interesting so badly, but she's not.
Yes, that is definitely like she's just guileless, you know, like
so totally clueless.
Yeah, totally clueless. Yes, and Emma is gossipy for her own ends, I think, because she finds it entertaining.
And she plays with people because she's bored. That's messed up.
Yeah,
it's kind of messed up. So she's like, oh, I'm bored. Who can I mess with today? I mean, pretty much is what. And so,
you know, but I mean, I did find a lot of the novel just humorous, all the misunderstandings, and the sidesteps, and all of that stuff. And I just found myself more engaged in it. I don't know why. Like I said, I feel like I need to give Pride and Prejudice another shot because I just
slow it down.
Yeah.
My favorite Jane Austen novel is the last one she wrote, and that's the last full novel she wrote, and that's Persuasion. You can read Sense and Sensibility, read Mansfield Park, and I always tell people you can or cannot read Northanger Abbey, and that's my own opinion going through. But if you want to read all 6 of the novels, definitely, and then read Persuasion last, because she's older, and it's just. I think it's her last novel, and I think it should be read last because there's some changes in her perception of the world, and she's lived and she's seen, you know, Pride and Prejudice, like I said, she started it when she was a teenager. And, you know, and a teenager in the Regency is very different than the teenager now because, you know, they're not on the internet and seeing everything going on in the world. There's very limited reality.
Yeah.
You know, and she lived in, her father was a preacher, and she lived in a rural area. And they did move to Bath for a spell, but, you know, so she had big city exposure because Bath was, you know, a very cosmopolitan city at that time period. But still, she lived a pretty small world. But she did travel. I mean, she wrote so many letters. A lot of them, when she died, her sister burned her letters, a lot of them, unfortunately. But there's still, you know, a volume of letters this thick. And so she traveled. She would, you know, travel to visit her brother or travel to visit aunts or cousins or family friends. So she did get out a little bit, but it's still in this kind of small Southampton area.
A little life. I think a lot of women just led a little life. I can see how a teenager would write a book like Pride and Prejudice, you know, because it is way more romantic than and the heroine is obviously just on the up and up, and her dad's favorite, and you know, it's a sweet book. I think okay, so obviously from what I can tell so far, a lot of Jane Austen is just about what happens when people don't communicate well, and I guess that was, now is that just an issue with these particular characters, or was it just like Emma insulting, who was it that she insulted on that picnic?
Miss Bates.
Miss Bates.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't say anything really all that insulting, but it was very insulting.
At that time period, it is.
Yes.
Because you just hold your tongue in the mirror.
All the time about so much that even some things that we would consider very minor or even just kind of teasing and funny is taken as very offensive. So I guess it's not just the characters themselves that don't communicate very well, but the society itself does not encourage open communication.
No, it doesn't lend itself because, again, you have to be reserved, and, you know, there are rules of engagement, so to speak, and manners and decorum about what can be said and what can't be said. These are the topics that you can talk about in mixed company. The weather, books, you know, family. And so you don't really put forth your own opinion.
Well, do you think that even trickled down into your private life, like what you felt like you could talk to in letters with your closest friends or your family members, or what you could even say to family members?
Well, that's interesting because in the letters between even Jane and Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice, they're, you know, they're a little more forthcoming, and the kind of conversations that the two of them have are more open, but that's because they're very close sisters. Elizabeth and Charlotte Lucas are a little more open with each other.
Yeah. But still pretty formal. I mean,
very formal. I mean, Charlotte Lucas is like, oh yeah, he spends his days doing this, and I have my little room where he doesn't come in, and everything's happy. Yeah. There's a lot of kind of undertone there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That she's not happily married, but she's found a way to be happy in life without being a burden to her family. And that's,
yes. And I guess that was something Jane Austen must have had an opinion on, of the people that marry for convenience and the people that marry for love.
Right. And the former is much more popular, or more done. Again, maybe not popular meaning people like it, but that's just more accepted.
Yeah.
You don't, if someone proposes, like, and so Jane Austen was proposed to, and she said yes, and then the next day she's like, oh wait, no, just kidding, no.
Really?
Oh. Yeah. So I mean, when you read her novels and you kind of understand her history and her own biography, there's obviously you write about what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Stephen King writes about his own experiences. I hope not. But he has.
There was that time I got pulled into a sewer grate by a clown. I'm going to write about that.
I know. But in that, that's what she wrote what she knew, and that's why I just absolutely love Persuasion. And I love the hero in that one. But I always say that I married one of her heroes, but it's not in that one. Okay. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, you made me think of something. The marriage proposals.
Mm-hmm.
Here is one thing that those women in her novels could do that I would find extremely uncomfortable and challenging, and that's saying no to somebody.
Right.
So was it that easy for women to say no? I mean, I can't imagine a man proposing to me and me having the guts to say no. I'd probably just marry the first guy that asked me, because I'm such a people pleaser.
Isn't that interesting though? And yes. I'm the same way. I always joke because my husband proposed to me at the top of the Empire State Building, and he knew I was afraid of heights. And I said he only did that so I'd say yes so I could get back down. I couldn't say no.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, yeah, sure. Just get me down. Get me off of here. So, isn't that weird? And
that's what I mean, did women just have to learn how to do this, and it didn't have as much emotional weight as we imagined it did?
I mean, Elizabeth says no twice. And again, but even, Harriet declines, and she has no station in life.
And Emma had to decline, what's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then, they're all saying no.
I know. Yeah. I guess you had to. And hope that something better came along.
I mean, I guess you had to learn how to say no, because a man could meet you and a day later ask you to marry him. And that's just the way it was.
Yeah.
But, I guarantee you, I just would have been like, okay.
No, in a way that's actually very empowering for women at the time.
Yes.
And I mean, by saying no, I love the line that Mr. Bennett says, that you will now be a stranger to one of your parents. If you, say yes, you will, be a stranger to me. And if you say no, you'll be a stranger to your mother, on the proposal from Collins. Mm. And that shows that decision is up to the girl.
Yes.
And even though there were arranged marriages and stuff, but they had a say.
Yeah. I wonder if most of the time it was just like let me consider that and I'll get back to you.
I think so. Like, oh, well, thank you for the proposal. I will respond appropriately in a few days. Yeah. God. And it was also, very common to ask the parents permission, but then you still had to ask the girl if you were the
I mean, I haven't seen any permission being asked in either of those two books. And Mr. Collins was staying at their house, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was staying at their house and didn't discuss it with Dad first.
But the mother knew he was going to propose. That's why she, puts them alone against Elizabeth's will.
Okay.
So there's some knowledge there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to them for being able to say no and stick up for themselves. That's
fantastic. I know. Well, luckily in the modern world, guys just don't go around proposing all the time either. So,
yeah.
So there's that. It's kind of balanced itself out.
Yeah.
At least that I know of. I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, for our sake at least, so we don't have to say no all the time. That is just crazy to me.
I know.
Okay, so is there anything else we should touch on, or you think we should touch on before we wrap up and talk about our giveaway?
Okay, so I know that you liked Emma better, but in general, what was your perception before you read them, and then how was that lived up to or challenged?
Well, I guess there are just so many women that I know on Instagram that are Jane Austen fans that I just figured I'd be reading something pretty light and entertaining, but not fluffy light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And of course, I've heard so much about Mr. Darcy over the years, so it was interesting to finally get to know him a little bit and see what he's up to. Now, there is a saying that I heard once that sometimes I agree with and sometimes I don't, and that is that women like to marry men that are nice to them and a-holes to everybody else.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I don't.
But sometimes
I
think of that saying when I read about a character like Mr. Darcy. Like there's something that women like about a man that's hard to love or hard to like or has issues or doesn't come across well to other people.
Right.
There's something really attractive in that, you know, type
I've
of
never
guy.
heard
So,
that. It's kind of interesting.
I know. It's weird. It's weird. But I thought about that with Mr. Darcy because he's really, I mean, sure, he's a good guy, but he did have his flaws. He came across bad for a reason. But see,
now, did you buy into the fact that he's just socially awkward? Because some people just aren't good in social situations, particularly when there's this expectation that, you know, you're a man of 10,000 pounds and all these girls are going to be falling on you and their mothers are pushing them at you.
Yes.
Like, I mean, it would be kind of unnerving.
To some extent, he's, of course, socially awkward. But the stuff he said to her when he proposed to her for the first time was totally obnoxious.
It is. It's so funny, though. But then the letter that he writes, Jane Austen's letters are incredible, and it's not just in, you know, this novels. Like, well, I love her letters. To me, I'm like, why is, maybe it's just because Pride and Prejudice is a way more popular book than Emma. It's not my favorite, honestly.
Yeah, so maybe that's why you just hear so much more about Mr. Darcy than Mr. Knightley, who Mr. Knightley to me seems like a way cooler person.
Yeah, I think I like Mr. Knightley better. But I also think Colin Firth playing Mr. Darcy in '95 is what kind of really amped it up in the modern world.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a pretty amazing Mr. Darcy. It makes me love Mr. Darcy more.
Well, maybe that's it. Because, going into it, I was definitely curious about this guy. And
he's aloof and I don't know.
Yeah.
Unattainable, sort of. But
no, I still like him as a guy. I was surprised by how much love there is for Mr. Darcy out in the world. And well, what about Mr. Knightley?
My order of favorites: Persuasion, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, and Emma are probably tied. I go back and forth, probably depending on the last one I read. Is the one I like a little bit better. And then obviously Northanger Abbey. So those are like my level. So I can't wait for you to read Sense and Sensibility.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Or listen to. But slow it down.
I would have liked to have gotten to know Mr. Knightley better. Like I feel like
he's
you definitely
funny.
Got to know Mr. Darcy better than Mr. Knightley.
But Mr. Knightley's funny. Like he is.
I like the way he just told it like it was. He was like,
girl, he's like,
what
Emma,
are you doing?
Yeah, no, don't.
Nonsense.
Yeah. He schools her. I like it.
Yeah. And now I don't like that he's so much older than her and he's doing that, because then there's kind of like a touch of like fatherliness to it. But I guess that was just the way it was. So. Yeah. Okay. Well, should we talk about our giveaway really quick and wrap this up? It's almost 45 minutes. So we're hosting a giveaway together.
Yes.
which is super fun. So we have 7 editions of Jane Austen books between the two of us. So we have some actual, like we have Emma and I don't know, like
we have a Pride and Prejudice.
We have like 3 Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
3 different editions.
Yeah.
And then some kind of fun little novelty books like the What Would Jane Say and the Pride and Prejudice and Puzzles book. And you have a Jane a Day 5-year journal.
Right.
So we're giving all those things away to 7 different people, which is super fun.
So,
so
you have to like our accounts, our Instagram.
Yes, you have to follow both of us on Instagram. And then we each have an individual sign-up link in our profiles that you have to click on. So you just click on our bio and you'll see a list of links, and one of them will be a Jane Austen giveaway. So you have to go there to enter as well. So it's going to be for a week. We are going to pick a winner. It'll close next Thursday, and we'll pick a winner on Friday.
Yep.
Yay!
And make sure that you have to do all of those things.
Yes.
So you have to sign up for both of our things and like both of our accounts. And for extra entries, you can share the contest in your stories and tag people.
Yes. And we decide that two of our winners are going to come exclusively from Instagram, from people sharing and tagging.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So next time we chat, Great Expectations.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We can do that. And then I also want to go back to Kidlit and talk about Heidi and some Anne of Green Gables, because you've read those.
Oh, yes.
Recently.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So we have many conversations to have.
Yes. I haven't read Heidi yet, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to read the 3rd Anne of Green Gables book.
Okay.
And so we'll have another topic about young girls in all these little novels. So it'll be so fun.
They're so sweet. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining me again and chatting with me about this.
Yes,
it's been so fun. I really appreciate you.
You too. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Bye.